G'day and welcome, guys, to another very special edition of My Blue Heaven. It's a three-part series called Crossing the Line. And this is basically running a really close eye over our playing list and how it all fits together, or how we see it fitting all together in 2022. Obviously, a huge pre-season, which needs to take place before ball is bounced in anger, but the boys are back on board, back on deck. Most of the playing group are back at training, and there's always a sense of optimism at this time of year, and we seem to forget what's recently transpired. A sack coach, a really poor year by our playing group, and as much as we go into a new season with a new sense of hope that things will change, we have to be realistic here and think what needs to happen. Where are the holes still in this list? How can we get better? So what we're going to do is look at the three lines separately. We'll start with the defence, we'll move into the midfield, and we'll finish off with the forwards. And joining me to do this, I'm absolutely rapt to have this guy on board. We've actually wanted to do this for a very long time. And no better way to start than to actually really strongly analyse our playing group and where it sits. I rate his football mind. He's an astute thinker of the game. He's first and foremost a Carlton fan. Barracked for the club as a kid. But the reason why I got this bloke on is he's played the game. He's played the game at the highest level. And he's also coached in his own right as well. I speak about Mark Alvey. Love his story as a footballer, drafted into the AFL in 1997 as a fresh-faced 17-year-old, very young. You just don't hear about that anymore. Being drafted as a 17-year-old, and then made his debut for the Western Bulldogs as a 17-year-old the following season against the West Coast Eagles at the Wacker there in Perth. And I actually looked up Al's first game, and these are the blokes he would have looked at in the face as far as opposition goes on that day against the Eagles. Ben Cousins, Peter Matera, Guy McKenna, Dean Kemp, Glenn Jakovich, Chris Lewis, and the mean machine, John Worsfold. God, how scary that would have been. But look, he spent 8 seasons on an AFL list. His time at the Western Bulldogs came to an end after he suffered a crippling ACL injury just when he started to be a regular at senior football. Spent a couple of years at the Essendon Football Club, coached by one of the greats, one of the all-time greats in Kevin Sheedy, and also Terry Wallace at the Western Bulldogs. As a teammate, he rubbed shoulders with some all-time greats, and we talk about the likes at the Western Bulldogs: Chris Grant, Brad Johnson, Scotty West, Tony Liberatore, and his great mate Rowan Smith. And then his time at the Bombers: James Hird, Matthew Lloyd, Dustin Fletcher, Mark McCurry, and Joe Watson. Once his AFL football stint was all over, Alvs returned to his hometown of Wentworth, and where he became a successful coach in his own right, steering the Wentworth District Football Club to premiership success both in 2009 and then again in 2012 in the very strong and powerful Sunraysia Football League. It's great to have him on, and we're going to have a really good chat tonight about our defence at the Carlton Football Club. G'day, welcome Alvs. Tonight, mate, we're having a deep look at our backline. So what we might start with, I know it's been a big bugbear of ours for a long period of time. I'm just trying to think back to the last time the Carlton Football Club had a really strong back 6 or 7. Probably we're thinking way back to the late 90s, early 2000s, mate. Even under Rats was probably a weakness of our game. We were a very attacking team, and we know the last 5 years in this rebuild, there's been a number of factors, whether it's talent, coaching, mindset, attitude, Just trying to get that right mix and that right balance. So tonight, mate, we want to have a really good look at our back 6 or 7, and we'll start off, obviously, with the big news 3 weeks ago now with the departure of Liam Jones. How do you think that will impact the club?
Yeah, certainly took a couple of days to get your head around that one, and it was a bit of a shock. But then you sort of pick yourself up and think, well, we've got a new system that's going to be brought in anyway, which I was already really eager to, see how that team defence / system was going to set up, especially after last year. And the word out of the pre-season was that we trained to play shootout footy, and there wasn't a lot of work behind the ball. So it's easy to say, yeah, we'll move on from it, and we've got to get team defence right. But Jones has got some remarkable traits. His intercept marking, his ability, one-on-one, his closing speed. He was a genuine fullback, and they don't fall off trees either. So and then probably the big one that I've thought about was, which really hurts, is just his cohesion with leaders. Like the last 3 to 4 years, they've built such a great relationship and had such a great understanding. Basically each week they would choose who they thought they should play on. So probably out of everything, that's the biggest one for me, is that it takes a period of time for a whole football club, I reckon, and a group of players, if they spend 2 to 3 seasons playing together, to really build something special. So that's probably the thing that stands out the most, is his relationship with leaders. And now what does that do to leaders as well? Like, he's got to take on more responsibility. He's going to have to train up other guys. He's probably every single week going to get the best forward, especially early in the season. So, and then the other thing too is, we don't want to see leaders get stuck at full back every week. So, that they are some things that concern me. I'm not sure what you think. Probably as far as what won't we miss with Jones is probably his kicking and decision making coming out of the back 50. They're probably areas that you had your heart in your mouth a little bit when he had the footy. But look, we'll definitely miss him. No two ways around that. But I'm also equally as excited to see what we can put in place and how we do run that team defence. And the team that played in the grand final, the Western Bulldogs, their back line was, they didn't have any Stephen Mays or Jacob Wederings. It was just a great team defence that was system based, that they all chopped out and helped for each other. So, if we can bring something like that to the table, especially when you look at what we've had in place the last couple of seasons, that is very exciting.
Yeah, look, I always referred to him as a bit of a bottle of contradictions, mate. On his day, he's a very consistent footballer, and I think his energy and where he's come from. But for me, it's his age. 31 years of age, and look, a lot of people were saying since he's gone, well, we had to move on from Jones anyway. But I thought he had at least another 2 or 3 years in him, which would give someone like a Lewis Young time to develop. And maybe be that third tour, or even allow Jones to play an intercept role, which we don't have that luxury anymore, mate. So from an age point of view, and what I think Liam Jones still had in him, I think it's a huge loss. But sometimes the bad, losing his feet, losing his man, and as you mentioned, mate, the decision making at times wasn't great. You didn't want the ball in the hands of Liam Jones too much. But as far as replacement goes, Alvs, that's probably the area we need to start thinking about. And there's probably 2 that are standing out. And if we're led to believe, inside the club at the moment, they've started pre-season training. They haven't hidden away from the fact about Mitch McGovern. Could he be trialled in that position? I have my doubts, obviously. His size at 191, although he does play tall, mate, I think he is an undersized key position defender. And obviously the other one is Lewis Young, who was brought to the club as a long-term replacement for Liam Jones. So they're the 2 that I'm thinking. And obviously the other one is Oscar McDonald, who I'm not a big rap for, to be perfectly honest. I think his bad is really bad in regards to decision-making. And he's a bit of an airhead, but he's on the list. He's on the list. So what do you think in regards to who replaces Liam Jones going forward? Obviously you talk about the combination between Wiedering. Who's going to be the other player?
I think it's got to be Young. I know he's only 22 and it's going to be a big ask, but, because I look at Gov and I probably think the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season, I can see them playing Gov back, especially while March. He's probably, he's going to need probably a good 4 to 6 weeks of VFL footy after the amount of footy he's missed the last 2 years. So something like Wiedering and Young, with Gov being that sort of third tall defender who can play on a really good forward, but he can also at times, if we've got our team defence set up well, be able to float off and intercept and take some marks, and then he's a beautiful kick either foot. So yeah, I'm thinking that's the way they might go early in the season. But I still like the option of having Gov, if he does play back at times, being able to be a bit of a swingman, and during the course of a game, I'd still like him to be thrown forward at times to take a catch, or if we're playing Pitney or TDK, that we've got Gov up our sleeve to go into the ruck. So I still think Young's got to be number 2. So if you've got Wiedering 1, Young's got to be number 2, and then let's try Gov as that sort of number 3, and let's see where Marchie can get back to. So that's probably where it sits at the moment.
Just with Young, mate, I mean, and you've been through the system, so the way coaches see different types of players. They have their favourites, there's no doubt about that. And you spoke about the Western Bulldogs and the fact that it is an unheralded defence. You've got Keith and Gardner, Cordy. I mean, they're no superstars. And you would think a guy of the calibre of Lewis Young, at 201 centimetres, great overhead, nice skills. Why would someone like Luke Beveridge, who's a smart cookie, I'm not sure they were keen on letting him go, but it didn't appear to me like they fought very hard for him. So, we'd be probably guessing here, but from an education point of view, mate, what do you think went wrong with Lewis Young at the Bulldogs?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I still think for Lewis Young, he is only 22. So, in years 3 and 4 at the Dogs, he was a 21-year-old. So he's still very young.
And I think he might have been the youngest bloke taken in that draft as well.
There you go. So, I think if he was 24, 25 and wasn't getting a game in that back line, that would probably be a little bit more alarming to me. But because he's still young and raw, and those key position players, we saw with Weeders, it was year 4 or 5 that he really started to hit his straps. So, it's a tricky one, and it's a fair point you raise. Like, I would have liked to have seen him play a bit more, and they threw him into the ruck a little bit there at times, and as well. So, and he just might have been out of favour a little bit too. And that's the beauty of a fresh start, fresh set of eyes. People have different opinion of you, but for him now, if I'm young, I'm looking at coming to Carlton. Jones is retired. I'm rubbing my hands together and thinking this is a great opportunity for me to go and have a wonderful football career, AFL career. So I reckon that would put a bit of a spring in his step. So as much as everyone else is upset that Jones is finished, if I'm young, I'm jumping out of my skin.
Yeah, and 2 young guys together, obviously Wiedering and Young coming through together sounds pretty bloody exciting, mate. Just with Aaron Hamill. Massive changes, obviously, in the footy department, Voss coming in and a whole heap of new assistant coaches, which we've been crying out for a long time now. Replaces Dale Amos, who had look, at a certain period of time, he had the back line actually going along okay pre-last year before Teague went all attacking. But the wheels certainly fell off last year, and it brought Aaron Hamill, former forward, now a backline coach, which to me, look, that doesn't concern me at all. But what do you think Aaron Hamill will bring to the table, mate? What are his main attributes? Will he bring in what you've seen from his work at St Kilda, and what this back 6 or 7 needs?
Yeah, I had a good mate of mine who coached with Aaron Hamill at St Kilda for a few years. So I asked him, I said, what's Aaron Hamill's, what's his biggest strengths? What's he going to bring to Carlton? And he just said he's a very hands-on coach. So he'll look to build relationships. He'll get to know the individual.
Yeah.
He's extremely passionate. And I like the fact that he's been away from Carlton for a long period of time. I actually watched his 15-minute interview he did there a couple of weeks ago. And he just seems so pumped to be back at the club. And for me, it's not just a job to him. He's actually going to put his heart and soul into the footy club and that backline group. So I felt great straight away, just not only watching that interview and then getting that feedback today. I think that's the sort of coach we're going to have. He's going to be extremely passionate, hands-on. But I like the fact that he went away and coached his own side in the VFL as well. I think that's really good. Just broadens his horizons as to how a whole football club looks from a coaching point of view, not just looking after one area of the ground. So I think that's great. So he brings that to the table as well. I'm just really keen to see how he shapes that team defence. How does he set it up? when we've got stoppages on the wing, and we'll get to Saad in a minute, but how do we manufacture 7 defenders with a +1 and freeing Saad up? So because we just haven't done that well. Like there's so many one-on-ones our backs have had to have in recent times. So how he shapes that tactically, I don't know. I'm not sure how great he is tactically, so I'm keen to have a look and see what comes to the table there. Yeah, great that he's going to be heart and soul, passionate, build relationships. That's great, but the tactics side of it's going to be very interesting.
And from a behavioural point of view, mate, and this is something that right across the board at our football club is this hardness and this competitiveness and this accountability. And we know from what we saw of Aaron Hamill, particularly when he was at the Saints, his leadership qualities when he went to St Kilda ended up being captain. We would be hoping that, it doesn't always happen, mate. Just because you're a hard footballer doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a hard team under you. But we must be buoyed with the fact that he was one of the biggest competitors that we've probably seen in the last 20 years as far as a footballer goes. He was as hard as a duck's beak. Yeah,
he was, and you'd like to think that he's going to bring that to the table with our back half and just the football club in general. Like you'd like to think that his personality is going to rub off on a lot of players, and it just sounds like that he's already started to build those relationships, and he'll make sure. I just gather that he's going to put that on the players that this is the way we play, and it's non-negotiable that you're competitive and you're ruthless in your attitude to defend. Yeah, we want to move the ball as well, but there's going to be certain parts in the game. If guys are having a bad day and getting a heap of goals kicked on them, I don't want you cracking jokes with blokes in the goal square, that sort of stuff. So, will we see Luke Hodge doing that sort of stuff if he's having a dirty day? Like that's where we've got to get to as a football club if we want to play finals on a regular basis.
We'll get to Saad because you mentioned him, mate, and look. He copped a fair bit in his first year, but I thought he was pretty consistent, and I thought he played under a fair bit of duress. And I thought I saw some real character in him in an early game against the Gold Coast Suns, where he was on one leg, and I thought he was not so much a match winner that night, but he was a massive contributor in regards to getting us over the line, and could have quite easily not played that night. So I think he's got some genuine ticker, but his attributes, and we can probably chuck. Zach Williams into this category as well. Their attributes in regards to their speed, the ability to try and release them. And it's not something we did very well. It was almost like we wanted to do it, but we didn't know how to do it this year. So how do we go about getting the best out of Adam Saad in 2022?
It's a great question. And I must say, Bucky, I was in a dysfunctional back half. I thought Adam Saad, first year at the club, not winning many games of footy, copping a lot of heat. I thought he really stood up. So I was pretty proud of his year. I thought he was terrific. And I was pleasantly surprised in the one-on-ones. He went back with the flight and his ability to win those. So I think if you put a good system in place, he could really explode next year. So, and that comes back to the question, I had around what tactics does Hamill have in the back half? How do we set up? I think you mentioned Salem and how well Melbourne were able to free him up and have that +1. And then they just pinged off half back. They were explosive and powerful off half back. And there's no reason we can't be like that with Williams and Saad as well. So, and that's going to come down to that. What sort of leadership, voice and direction do we have in that back 6 or 7 players? Are we prepared to sacrifice and be able to free up a Saad? And we look inboard and hit that 25-metre pass, and then we open up the corridor and away Saad goes. Another one for me too is, why does he always have to play in the back 6? Why can't he go up on the wing at times? He's such a beautiful long kick that, I think as a wingman at times with, if we're pressing up and the ball's in our front half, that we free him up and he plays a little bit high, because on the run around 50, I could see him kicking. He could have a season where he kicked 15 to 18 goals or something like that, Bucky. So I would like to think that we've got an open mind, not just to play him at half back. And yes, we want to free him up and get the ball in his hands, but why can't he play up on a wing at times in bursts and we get the ball in his hands in the front half a little bit more?
It is a weakness too, isn't it, mate, across that centre line? And we'll touch on that next week when we have a look at the midfield. Just with Zach Williams, look, where you're sitting with Zach Williams, brought to the club. This is in the past now. Brought to the club as a midfield, didn't work out. Probably under his own admission, was underdone. And it was almost, we had to play him we recruited him, so we needed to play him and hide him in the back half. From my point of view, the best thing to do for Williams at that stage, or the strong thing to do from a really strong football club, was one, get him in the shape before, when he arrived in the pre-season, but two, not play him in the back line as an easy option. So where do you sit with him? Is it finished for him in regards to the midfield, or you think he's a viable option, or is his best position down back across the half back line? Because his speed, because he's an aggressive type player as well, in your face type defender who can defend. We've seen him do it at GWS. Is that his spot now, or are you not giving up on Zach Williams as a midfielder?
I think, first of all, for Zach Williams, I just want to see a professional. So I want to see him rock hard fit. Your skin folds are low. Your fair income. That's got to be the first part. So that's he's responsible for that. Then his football side of it. I would actually, now that we've built a bit more midfield depth with Hewitt and Chera and the like, Dow another season, it's a little bit harder to get in there too when you got Walsh and Cripps as well. So I'd just like Williams to go to half back, be consistent early in the season, first 6 to 8 rounds. This is what we need from you. You played a lot of footy there. Yeah, we're not going to have Jones. We're going to have a new system in place. Show some actual leadership, take ownership of that back half, play some good footy in the first half of the season. Once again, though, have an open mind that, if we're 20 minutes into the third quarter, it's a bit of an arm wrestle. We need to make a change. Why couldn't we release a Williams in there then for a burst? Last 45 minutes of the game, he goes in there with his ball use, the ability to break out a stoppage, the game to open up a little bit more in the second half. If he's played half back, he hasn't used as much fuel throughout the game. So they're the sorts of things I'd like to see at Williams. So, yeah, like I said, rock up professional, rock hard fit, settle his role down and show some leadership in the back half to start the season. And then as the season goes on, have an open mind about using him in bursts in the midfield. That's probably the plan I would like to put in place for him. Just simplify it all for him.
It's an interesting point, mate, because we've spoken about, obviously, two really attacking half-back flankers in Saad and Williams, who, we need to carry the ball. That speed across half-back, that transition is just really important. So that probably leads us to my next point in regards to who plays that sort of medium type, smallish type lockdown defender in the sort of calibre of your Taylor DeRay, who I was super impressed with at the Western Bulldogs this year, that ability to one, lock down on a dangerous forward, but still be able to win his own pillar himself and use it really well. So we don't appear to have a lot of options in that regard. Obviously, Liam Stocker played a fair bit down back this year, but we are hoping in time that he can move into the midfield. Who is that man? Because you can't have all of them, mate. You can't have all of them being a Williams and a Saad. There has to be one who they all need to defend. They all need to defend, but there needs to be one who needs to be more locked down than the others. So who is that man? Is it Plowman? We'll get to him. Is it Plowman? Is it Stocker? Is it Williamson? Because we don't appear to have a lot of options in that regards.
We don't, and it's a huge issue still. Even when I look at our list, so I think that's one position. The other one's the wing. So they're the two spots right at the moment for me, and that's why we'll talk about it when we do the midfield, giving Lochie O'Brien a bit more of a go on that wing. But we're definitely specialist wingmen short, and Toby Green, Dustin Martin, Patrick Dangerfield, those types when they play forward, we don't have matchups, and it's a huge concern. Stocker's playing there at the moment. I dare say he'll start there again. I'm thinking. Geez, a big ask for Stocker to play on Dustin Martin round one. Toby Green, when he gets back, when we play him, if Danger goes to the goal square like that, it's a huge concern. As far as someone that could potentially, I'm only throwing this out there, and I think you're going to bring it up later, but could if Gov gets flicked back forward, is there a chance for Jay Sauce to go back down there? Potentially. He's hard, he's tough, he's disciplined. He makes good decisions with the footy. He'll use it well. He will do whatever role is asked of him. So I'm just thinking a little bit left field because it's an issue, and I would like to think at some stage that we look at Sauce in that back half. I'm not sure what you think of that, Bucky, but that's like sort of one from left field.
I like it because of his attitude for a start. the only concern, and this is probably a concern with Stocker as well, is the leg speed.
Leg speed. Have to be the right matchup, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's probably guys that we don't know a lot about at the moment. Obviously, we've got like Newman, who I thought finished the year really well, but he's a similar type to Saad and Williams. He's a bit of a see ball, get ball type defender. I don't think he's great defensively. We don't know a lot about young Boyd. You know, Nick Austin, obviously really impressed with him in his time at the Western Bulldogs as that halfback flanker. Now, he is one who's got some genuine speed and is strong and can use the ball as well. So he might even have a huge preseason, mate. And we're probably forgetting Doc as well. You know, and I know that you're a big believer in getting Doc when he's right to go. I can't see it happening before, you know, I don't think he'd be ready for round one, but does he go up to a wing? So we do have some genuine options in regards to the guys that are unknown, but I really like, mate, your idea of Sauce, because what it means is we can't play them all in the front half, can we? If you're going to play them.
No, we can't. And we've got, like you said, we've got a lot of options for the front half as well at the moment, especially with our mid rotations and Cripper potentially spending a bit more time forward.
Is Kemp too tall for that role? Is he more your intercept defender at 192, 193, whatever height he is? Is he too big for that lockdown role, or you want to see him develop his game without having, I suppose, that extra pressure is locking down on, you know, on the best medium size forward?
The hard one with Kemp is we just haven't seen him play enough, have we? So like he come to the club and he's hardly played. So I'd just like to see him play another 4 or 5 games, and then you get a bit more of a feel for, you know, what type of player he's, you know, what role could he potentially play. So I guess I'm really hoping, and you are, and the rest of the supporter base, that we can develop some guys over summer through some scrimmages and practice matches and internal games, and hopefully 1 or 2 jump up out of the ground a little bit for that role, because at the moment it's glaring, to be honest. Like we just don't have, you know, anyone to play that role. Like it's really concerning. Really concerning.
Yeah, I actually thought it would have been something we could have targeted either in the trade period. And I know we've just gone with Jesse Motlop in the draft as that sort of another sort of smaller type forward who can play in the midfield. But it seems to me that it's an area that we've lacked for a long period of time now. And most clubs have that type. You know, your Jed Bews, who's got speed and pace and is disciplined. You know, that they're sort of hard-nosed, mate. They're disciplined. They don't care about, you know, getting the numbers, do they? They're not care super coach points. Rivers is the same at Melbourne. I even see, I mean, I know he's a different type player, but a Petty at Melbourne seems the same as well. They just want to do their role for the team.
Well, Tomlinson went down and then Petty stepped in, and like he was brilliant. He was unheralded. He was superb. Yeah.
Exactly right. And Tomlinson was more the type of, okay, I can lock down, but I want to win the ball myself. Whereas Petty was he just wanted to play his role. He'll let Lever do the intercept. He'll let May do the intercept. And I'll just play my role, lock down on my opponent. And unfortunately, that probably leads us to, it's not even an elephant in the room, mate, your opinion on Lochie Plowman and where he sits, because he's been a long time at the football club, highly rated internally by the predecessors now. So that's interesting in itself. And he has a new beginning like any other player. It's a fresh start for him. It's not a given that he's part of that back 6 or 7 that he has been since he's been at the football club. So where do you think he sits? Can you see a future for him? Because I know he has been frustrating for us. He's got a lot of fans, but he's got a lot of haters as well. Where do you sit with Lochie Plowman?
I don't think there's a player that divides the fan base more than Lochie Plowman. And like these discussions we have, nothing is personal. We're just talking about the football that we watch, and we form opinions, and we have strong opinions. A lot of us do. And but probably the one thing that I'm doing at the moment, Bucky, is I think it's a clean slate for every player that's on that list. So I've got that mindset, and that's even with Lochie. Like I haven't been a massive fan. Everyone knows that. But I think it's a clean slate, and you have an open mind. And if we put a team defense in place that's, you know, he can play a really important role and step into those roles, then I think that's fantastic. What I think the problem has been with Lochie is there's never been any real selection integrity for his spot. And I thought on 3 or 4 occasions last year, he just had to be omitted from the side, and he just got picked every week. He was a favourite, and he could do no wrong. And he was the player that, round 2 against Collingwood, who had so many goals kicked on him that night. Look, everyone has a dirty night, but he was cracking gags and jokes with the go in the goal square late in the game, and I just hated it. Like, I just thought, we're not a ruthless football club if that's going on. And if Luke Hodge was having a night like that, I can guarantee you now that he'd be wanting to put a physical presence on the next bloke to come into his area, and Lochie was just cracking gags, and I just didn't like it. So I've got an open mind. Like I said, clean slate. I wouldn't have him in my round 1 side. I wouldn't have him in my back 6. I mean, I imagine that he will. And if he plays well, I'll be first to put my hand up and say great stuff. But I'd like to see him have to fight and scrap for his spot in the side. That's what I'd like to see.
What is it about him that is rated? I mean, to me, he's a bloke that's never put on a lot of size, and I don't see him as I like my backmen playing that role to be a physical presence. If they're not winning their own ball and being damaging, they need to be a real physical presence, not necessarily doing, like I'm not asking him to do a Liam Stocker and I and fucking my checkout, but I need it to be in your face, locking on to your defender and being really, really aggressive, mate, and showing that you hate to be beaten. I want to know what his attributes are, because I don't see it. I don't see it. But I liked him when he first arrived at the club. I thought he had a lot of ability, but to me, he just hasn't developed. And to me, he's had an easy ride for about 5 or 6 years, to be perfectly honest.
He's had probably one of the easiest rides I've seen from a player at an AFL club. That's just my opinion. Others
that's brutal, but it's nothing personal. But what are the attributes? What are they, mate? I mean, we're not seeing?
I just don't see it. And others say that he does great lockdown jobs and whatever else. But for mine, he needs to be a ruthless competitor in every one-on-one contest. That's got to be non-negotiable, and he's just not. That's hopefully Hamill maybe can bring that out of him, and he can see that he's got to fight for his spot. But the problem was last year, on 3 or 4 occasions he should have been omitted. He wasn't, so he's just comfortable, too comfortable. Was a favourite, knew he was going to play every week. And look, at times he played some steady footy. But what are his attributes? Like what? Tell me what's an A or A+ in his game. Oh, there's nothing for me. Yeah,
so when you were at the Dogs, mate, who were you looking up to? Who were the type of players you were looking up? Senior figures. Well, I mean, you made your debut at 17 years of age. I mean, and you must have gone out into that ground the first time and were looking for not so much inspiration, but looking to be, I suppose, guided in a sense from senior leaders at the football club who wanted to fly the flag for you. I mean, I don't see it in Lochie. I really don't. And this is the part of my problem, that the young blokes that are coming through really don't have anyone in their corner from that perspective. So, I mean, just from your point of view, mate, who was it at the Bulldogs, at Essendon when you went there, who were really flying the flag for the young guys?
Oh, I remember even early days, Tony Liberatore used to get me and Nathan Brown out of bed 5:30 in the morning. He'd have us running through the streets like we were running up and down hills, and he was ruthless. I remember my first game at the Bulldogs, I was only 17, and intra-club game, Terry Wallace put Tony Liberatore on me to tag me to see what I was made of. And he belted me 3 or 4 times behind play, just good cheap shots in the stomach. And, but those sorts of things, we're a ruthless group, or we're a ruthless football club. Like, do we stand up for each other? That's where we've got to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about belting blokes and getting suspended, but we just need to have a hard edge to the way we play. Now, you would think with the way that Hamill and Voss and that played their football, that's a non-negotiable. That's just a basic starting point that the whole group have to buy into. But as far as Lochie goes, I just haven't seen that. So if he brings that to the table and he can show that I know he cares, but I want to see him in every contest be like that. So that's the challenge. And if he does, great. That means we're going to be a better side.
Did you see much in Park last year, mate, to get you impressed or a little bit excited? I mean, he's a little bit raw with his disposals, but he's one that appears to want to really fight. I mean,
early on,
you want to see.
Yeah, I'm hoping that with that time in the system and another pre-season, that he can come on and he can gain some confidence and get some self-belief, because he had a hard body that he wanted to hurt and he wanted to tackle. He then just got touched up with a little bit of class from some opposition players at times after that. So maybe it's a good learning curve for him, and he could be one that jumps up and plays that role, because he's certainly got that hardened body, and he wants to engage in the ruthless physical side of the game. So he's a bit of a watch his space, I reckon.
Let's project to round one, mate. I've got 16 names here. A couple of question marks against two of them, McGovern, Silvani. We've mentioned those two tonight. It's probably a given now that McGovern's going to be trolled down back, and this is based on injuries, illness. We're not probably predicting Doc to be playing round one, and I think Marchbank might be probably a little bit away considering his ACL. So at the moment, I'm going to give you these names, Alvs, and you're going to give us your, let's say, back seven, okay, considering we'll probably play one or two on the bench. So we've got Wiedering, Kemp, Newman, no particular order here. So Wiedering, Kemp, Newman, Saad, Lewis Young, Williams, McDonald, Plowman, Stocker, Parks, Williamson, Boyd, McGovern, Silvani. You're back six, mate, and then maybe one on the bench for round one against the Tigers at the MCG. Given that all those guys have a good pre-season.
Yeah, so if everyone's healthy, I've left Marchie and Doc out because they're.
Yep.
I think Marchie will need 4 to 6 weeks at least in the VFL, bring him up to speed. Doc, we're not sure where he's at, so I'll just leave those two out. But my back six would be Stocker, Young, McGovern.
Okay, mate, I'll write that down. Stocker,
Young, McGovern.
Yep.
Saad, Wiedering, Williams.
Saad and Wiedering. And on the bench?
And then my seventh defender that goes into that mix to try and free others up is Newman. So whether he's on wing and he rolls back and, we free a McGovern up for some intercept marks, or you free a Saad up or Williams up to, for that.
Yep.
We take an intercept mark and we've got a release player to go. So that's probably the 7 at the moment that stand out. I'd really like a couple to jump up out of the ground and put their hand up over summer. And then obviously Plowman's going to be right in that mix there somewhere, and I'd be very surprised if he's not there round one. But I just want there to be pressure on guys for spots, and you really got to earn your game. Like outside Wiedering, Saad, Williams, if he's fit, there shouldn't be any walk-ups for the rest, I wouldn't have thought. So Young, he's going to have to perform over summer, but he's got a great opportunity. McGovern seems like he's got his body and his fitness sorted, but we need continuity from Gov as well. Stocker looks like he's close to cementing a spot, and then you got Newman in the mix with quite a few others. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But right at the moment, that sort of 6 or 7 I think stands out. I
like it, mate. Where do you see Kemp? Where do you see him? I obviously got some good game time in the last couple of games of the year. Looks a real talent. Is it just a matter of getting more games into him at VFL level, considering obviously COVID has wrecked the last 2 years and still coming off an ACL and a pretty ordinary ankle? I think it may have been an ankle injury. Where do you see him fitting into the scheme of things moving forward?
He's a real hard one, Bucky, to get a read on, for the simple fact that he just hasn't played games. So yeah. I think it was great that he was able to get a taste of it, got himself in the mix. He looks like, from what I can see, a kid who just wants to get the best out of himself. He looks like he looks after himself really well. His body looks like he's rock hard, really fit, really cut. So he's one of those ones that I'm hoping with a really good summer, some continuity of playing games, that he could really jump out. I find it hard though to say, I think he should play back or he should play here, because I just haven't seen him play enough. So he's one that I'll keep a close eye on, and I'm pretty excited about what he can bring to the table though.
The continuity, mate, just to finish off, of getting that back 6 or 7, given, if you can keep it healthy, how important that is. We've seen it with Melbourne this year. They lost Tomlinson, but they brought Petty straight in. It was just seamlessly sort of fitted into their back 6 or 7. Is there anyone on the list that I haven't mentioned in that 16, just as a smoky? We mentioned Sauce before, Jack as a possibility going back, but remember, Raps pulled a bit of a surprise back in 2-11 when he put Chris Yowen across half back. I mean, we've got a lot of half back flankers. It's not like we're in desperate need of finding a running half back flanker. But is there anyone that on the list who's maybe playing midfield or forward that could go down back as a surprise?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I spoiled that one a little bit earlier with Sauce. He was probably my one out of the bag that I would like to have a look at him back. I think he's got the attributes to go back there and play on the right type of player, and he's hard and he's tough. And if Fife's resting there, I could see Sauce going and play on him, and then if Fife goes on board, you could have Sauce following him in that sort of role. Like that's probably the one out of the bag. Obviously, we're going to trial McGovern. When he gets back, do we look at Can Cunningham play half back with his speed and his running?
We forget about him. Yeah, we forget about
Cunners a little bit. I thought in his 3 to 4 games before he hurt his knee, I just thought, okay, the penny's dropped a little bit here. He's starting to, he looks like he's going to become a player at 24, 25. So hopefully he can get back and have no hiccups. So they're probably 2 or 3 that we're going to have a look at some stage. I think they'll definitely, like you said, look at McGovern early in the season. I can see JSOS going back there at some stage. And then hopefully we have a couple of others jump out of the ground.
Are you defences win your premierships, mate? I know from my point of view, they certainly set you up to win a premiership, maybe not on grand final day. It's sometimes, we saw Melbourne blow the Western Bulldogs out of the park halfway through that second quarter in the grand final this year and just scored very heavily. But are you a great believer in defences set you up to win a premiership?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and never more so than in the game right now. I mean, Melbourne went large parts of last year where they were happy at times to lose the stoppage, win it back at half back, and then they just set their whole game up from there. Yeah. Their power running and their burst was unbelievable. I mean, Salem basically didn't have an opponent for the whole year because they were that well organised behind the ball. Lever just played on the 6th forward, a small forward, sat off, took tested mark after mark, and they just set up their game from back there. So they had that approach, and then you had the Dogs who were just no stars really, but just a great team defence. So we've got to get that right. I mean, I knew we were in trouble middle of last year when we played those 2 games in Sydney. We played West Coast and Sydney, and basically the ball went from end to end like it was at training where you're doing no contact from end to end. I haven't seen anything worse in my life at AFL level, I don't think. So, I mean, we'll improve 3 to 4 goals straight up on the back of having a decent team defence and system in place. So that's exciting before we even start, before you even get to the health of other guys in our squad, which I'm sure we'll touch on as we go. So that's exciting straight away. So, yeah, but we've got to get that right. And I'm interested to see how tactically minded Hamill is. I know he's going to bring some other great things to the table, but that part of the game, when we've got great weapons in that part of the ground that we need to utilise really well, is going to be very, very interesting.
Pleasure having you on, mate. Midfield next week. We will have a look at the wingers as well. Obviously, Melbourne did it superbly by putting Brayshaw as that defensive winger, and how good is he just pushing back and supporting that back 6 and 7 as well. So we'll touch upon some clear weaknesses in our midfield next week, mate. Great to have you on.
Good stuff, Bucky. Enjoy the chat, mate. Good stuff.
Cheers.